Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxer Report, episode 344, special Sunday night edition. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, no Gail this week, by the way. She's traveling. Um, she was in Las Vegas for the Crawford Porter card that took place last night, so she's still on the road. But joining us this week, Daniel from the Inscriber and Four Boxing News. You've heard him on the show before. He's back again on this Sunday evening. Bo, aka Truth and Facts, head of media relations for Three Kings Boxing. What's going on, fellas?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, glad to be here. I'm gonna have to talk to Gail. I didn't give her permission for that.
For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show, podcast, as well as blog slash website. You want to find out all information regarding the P4P Boxing Report, the blog page or the website is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. If you check throughout the page, top half of the page, especially top right hand portion of the page, especially, you'll find links to where to find the podcast, be it on Spotify, be it on Apple Podcasts, be it on Anchor, and any and everywhere else between. Also, find information where you can find the show on social media, Facebook, IG. Finally got the Facebook thing corrected, so you can find the show on Facebook now. Facebook, IG, Tumblr, Twitter, YouTube. Also, where you can email the show, you can do so at P4P P4P at P4PBoxingReport.com. Where you can donate. Got a Cash Me PayPal donation link. Gonna hold up on the coaching for a minute now. My schedule is really busy, so no Beachbody on Demand coaching, but you can still check out BOD Beachbody on Demand for any all programs, fitness related programs that suit all your interests. Also, take advantage of the 2 week trial. And again, for 2 weeks, you can get free access to any and all programs on Beachbody on Demand. So I strongly suggest you take advantage of that. Let's get things going by recapping what went down in boxing really over the past 2 weeks. Let's get started first and foremost with what took place in Vegas just last evening. That is the big welterweight fight between Terence Crawford putting his WBO welterweight title on the line against former two-time champion Shawn Porter. And I'll go first to you on this one, Bo, since you haven't been here in a while. Um, Porter got off to what I felt was a really good start, and as an aside, did the fight, covered the fight for Three Kings Boxing. Please check out threekingsboxing.com, your source for pure, unadulterated boxing information. A shout out to Bo, the head of media relations. A shout out to the man behind the scenes, the man, the HNIC of Three Kings Boxing, 2K lead journalist Bakari, fellow senior writer. Jarrell, aka Big Cool, editor Red. Again, threekingsboxing.com. We on the come up, your source for pure, unadulterated boxing information. But again, I covered that card in that fight for Three Kings, and I felt that Porter got off to a very good start. Um, Halfway through, I had Porter personally up on my card, but if you felt that Crawford was up, I'm not going to push back. But in rounds 7, 8, and 9, Bo,
Mm-hmm.
Crawford started to gain a semblance of control. He kind of changed things up. He took a step back, got some room, and was able to get the combinations off on Porter. Porter got a little bit too aggressive, but it was the 10th round where things really took a turn, a dramatic turn. Crawford put Porter down with a left uppercut, put him on the seat of his pants, put him down again for a second time follow up combination, which included a big right hook to the head. Porter went down that second time and obviously frustrated. He began to pound his fist on the floor. And then, inexplicably, in my opinion, Porter's trainer slash father, Kenny, uh, stood up on the ring post and decided that enough was enough and called the fight. A lot of discussion about that incident afterwards in the ring. Kenny Porter said that the reason he stopped it was due to a lack of preparation from his son heading in. To me, almost 24 hours later, that has got as much attention from fans and pundits as the actual fight itself. So first and foremost, let's get to the fight itself. before we get to post fight, your thoughts on what went down in the ultimate stoppage, if you will.
What went down is the way that if you watch the Three Kings podcast that me and 2K does, we told you what happens is Shawn Porter be doing okay, but in every fight, whether it's Keith Thurman, Earl Spence, in every fight against the top level guys, they start pulling away because Shawn Porter is going to revert back to what he knows, which is to try to attack and bull rush and jump in. And when he did that, Terence Crawford was patient and waited for him to do it. And like you said, he started pulling away because that's what Shawn Porter, resorted to doing. Shawn Porter had he actually, that was the best Shawn Porter I've ever seen in that fight. So I give him all credit for that. But Shawn Porter initially realized, hey, I'm behind, or he felt he was behind. It wasn't working for him. He had one game plan. He came in, he tried to box, and then he went from that to when he was, doing the quick, do the quick hit in and out. All right. Then after that, he went to, okay, man, I'm just gonna jump on this dude and attack him. And when he did that, Crawford was waiting on him to do that. Crawford was very patient, waiting on him to do that because he knew this is what he's gonna have to do, and I got a game plan for that. So that's initially, what you saw. You saw it play out the way that we all thought it was going to play out. Was it was going to be a close fight in the beginning, but towards the end, Crawford would start separating himself to show you why he's on that higher level. Right? No surprise there. The surprise is Kenny Porter stopping the fight. Understand something, because a lot of people say, "Oh, that's a father looking out for his son." Bullshit. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a father looking out for his son. Diego Corrales, that dad, what he did, that's a father looking out for his goddamn son. Okay? You getting beat like that? Yes. Shawn Porter was not getting beat like that. And on top of that, Shawn Porter was clearly banging on the canvas. He was very lucid. He was very aware. He wasn't even, when he stood up, he wasn't staggering backwards and off balance. He was banging on the canvas because he was upset at himself for getting knocked down a second time. And he got up, he was angry. He wasn't a dude that was staggering. It wasn't a dude stumbling. It wasn't a dude that was, didn't have his wits about him. It's not what you saw. You saw a dude that got knocked down. It was like, damn, fuck. And he got up, and his father jumped in because and credit to my man 2K, Kenny Porter. He's a sore loser. He's a sore loser. Kenny Porter is one of those guys that if you play in the game and if you playing Madden and somebody's beating you like 56-0, all right, man, you hit the reset button. All right, man, you hit the reset button and throw the controller across the room. All right, man, I'm done. Right? Because he got knocked down. Listen, he's been knocked down before, and Adrian Broner, he's been knocked down against Earl Spence. The problem was those happened in the 12th round. So at that point, you gotta let him finish the fight. There's nothing that says to me why he should have stopped that fight. Then his excuse for why he stopped it was even more dumb to me. He said his preparation. Understand one thing. Kenny Porter indicated, and these were his words, that sometime a fighter reach a certain level that they feel they don't have to listen to you anymore. If you go back and you watch when Kenny Porter is barking orders at Shawn Porter, if you've been watching some of the ESPN coverage, what is Shawn Porter's response? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's the way he's saying it. He's saying it like military type. Like, I believe what you say so much so I'm willing to die for this. This wasn't your typical, yes, sir. Yes, sir. This was, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like, hey, I believe what you tell me so much so that I'm not going to question. I'm not going to doubt it. It's military type stuff right there. So, for you to say that your son, after me listening to your son talk to you like that, after me listening to how your son takes what you say so seriously with his responses to how you tell him, you want me to believe that for some odd reason he didn't listen in preparation to something you said? No, I don't believe that. And if that's the case, then guess what? You knew this going into the fight. So why didn't you? So for you to just stop the fight like that, if you're telling me there's something wrong with that man's preparation, well, you're part of that man's preparation. Okay, you part of that man's preparation. So no, I'm not believing or buying anything about Shawn Porter not listening to his dad. He reveres his father too much for you to tell me that he didn't listen to you and a game plan that y'all came up with to fight Terence Crawford. And then, like I said, then on top of that, man, that stoppage, in my honest opinion, people are talking more about the way Kenny Porter stopped the fight and is not willing to give Terence Crawford credit for stopping Shawn Porter because they like, no, I've seen people say it like, man, I'm not giving him credit for that stoppage, man. His daddy jumped in when this dude clearly could fight. So it's if I don't believe that they talked about this being his last fight. I don't believe that. But even if that's the case, then this is your son's last fight, man. You got to let him go out like that. So no, this was Kenny Porter only thinking about himself, and he was being too much of a father than being a trainer because there's no way like I said, there was nothing. If you go back and watch Diego Corrales, that dad, yeah, I see that dad stopping that fight, or Arturo Gotti when what's his name, Buddy McGirt stopped the fight. Yes, I get that, but what Kenny Porter did, no. But all in all, man, it was a great fight though.
To your point, and shout out to Logic for checking us out the show live. To your earlier point, Bo, in terms of Kenny, he says that it's hard to believe Shawn Porter, who was known for always coming into fight in the best shape, wasn't ready to face his toughest fight, unprepared. I'll go to you, Daniel. I agree. I concur with pretty much everything that Bo has said. My issue is not just what he said after the fight, but the fact that he did so publicly, right? Uh the way that Bo was alluding to how Shawn was saying yes sir, no sir. If you watch the little pre-fight series that they did on ESPN, like part 1, part 2, a prevailing theme that I got from Team Porter was Kenny basically not just being super strict, but he was telling him, well, do as I say. If you do this, A equals B. If you do this, then the fight will be easier for you. You're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing this. And to me, it seemed when he got knocked down, Porter, that was just a reinforcement of Kenny just being so dogged, telling his son, you're not doing this right, you're not doing this right. I guess in short, it became more about Kenny Porter than it was about Shawn. Because if it wasn't to a degree, he wouldn't have did what he did. It kind of put him on blast like that after the fight. Bad enough that he injected himself when Porter was, to me, clear headed. Yes, he went down, but he wasn't just wobbling around the ring. But to chastise him in that way, which was just a reinforcement of the way he was chastising him throughout the camp, I didn't like it. I didn't like it one bit. It felt like he was throwing his son under the bus. One, it felt like he was putting himself front and center in front and center. I'll just put it like that, front and center. And again, it became more about him, the dad, than it was about the son. And the son was left to look, for lack of a better word, embarrassed and shamed.
Oh, I think you're being too kind there, Mike, when it comes into this. Because it's one thing to say what Kenny Porter said about his son, Shawn, privately or in the post fight interview afterwards. Like, you had a couple interviews and you felt like, you know what, I didn't think he prepared. Prepared into that fight. That's one thing. But to say it right there, post fight interview, and with him right next to you, and you could see Shawn clearly protesting him saying it.
What he said was, when you say we've never discussed this before, and then you say that,
yeah,
that cut deep, man. That cuts deep.
Yeah, but that's the thing. But this is to me, this wasn't a dad. Like I said, didn't I didn't think of it last night. I didn't think of it now. I don't think this was a situation where a father was trying to save his son from a beating. This was a father wanting to humiliate his son for not doing what he wanted him to do. And to do it in this manner, it just leaves a bad taste in the mouth because we've seen Shawn Porter get knocked down before. For God's sakes, we've seen Shawn Porter be knocked down by Adrian Broner in the 12th round of a fight in a flash knockdown. So Porter being on the canvas is not anything new. So this is just, like I said, this is Kenny Porter putting himself in the front center. And it clearly probably played into the strategic decision of Shawn Porter saying that he's retired. Because I'm like, Bo, I don't believe it. I don't believe that he retired from boxing. He probably realizes that in his next fight, no matter what, whether he stayed with Kenny or whether he fired him, he knows that the media questions that would come with that camp, no matter what, are going to be about his relationship with Kenny Porter. That's going to be it no matter what for the foreseeable future. So why not take yourself out, probably stay out for a year. You can do broadcasting where they're not going to ask you. And then late 2022, early 2023, when you see some of the people currently in the welterweight division possibly moving up, you can see Errol Spence probably moving up. There's a good chance that Bud moves up too. That try your hand there, because at that point, then you'll have a couple of young guys in Virgil Ortiz and Gerald Boots Ennis that are either be on the cusp of a title shot or already champions. Take your shot there, and by then, people hopefully in your mind will forget what your father did to you. That's the main thing into it. They can relax, they can be friendly afterwards, but Kenny Porter, like, okay, I wouldn't say he threw Shawn over the bus. He shot Shawn Porter out of a cannon with the aim being under a bus.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. A couple of more comments here from Logic. He says, I'm gonna put it up again. Kenny Porter could have said he was proud of his son, of how his son performed instead of trashing him and praising Crawford immensely in front of son. Man, look, absolutely. He also says that don't think I've ever seen Kenny Porter praise his son after the fight as he did to Crawford last night. He also says that with that $6 million paycheck, don't think Porter going to see that kind of money again. It will stick to commentary. The first two comments, Logic, I absolutely agree. To do that, Bo, and then to go out of your way and praise the guy who beat your son like that, again, he's cutting deep. He's cutting deep. I'm surprised that privately.
Cutting deep. No, motherfucker. He put the dagger in the heart. He just ain't pierced the major artery yet. He like, yeah, right.
and against the backdrop that whether it was those specials or even after during prior fights, you've rarely, if ever, seen Porter praise his son. Woo! I know Porter tried to keep it cool, and after the fight, for those who don't know, he announced his retirement at the post-fight press conference. But as you and Daniel said, you don't believe it. You think that he will come back. For me, if he does, will he have his father in his corner? Because if that was me, no. You don't put me on blast like that, embarrass me that way. One of maybe the biggest fight of my career, or one of them, cut short the opportunity for me to come back and win, and then act like everything is going to be cool all afterwards. No, he's his dad and all, but I wouldn't bring him back. I would not. I just wouldn't. Another part of this, and I'll go back to you on this one, Bo. Daniel mentioned kind of the future, if you will, for Crawford, and the name Errol Spence he said Errol Spence's name, right? Another thing that has folks talking was Spence, who was at the fight, at the fight's conclusion, he kind of shook his head and turned away. A lot of folks, folks at ESPN covering the fight was, I think they were wrong to say this. Their analysis of this was just way off, in my opinion. They used that to say essentially that Spence doesn't want to fight Crawford. I
Mm-hmm.
heard that same thing on boxing Twitter afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a mistake that Spence kind of showed that visible frustration and shook his head and turned away at the conclusion of the bout?
No, and here's the reason why I say that. Right, Earl Spence is not the first fighter to do something like that. I remember Danny Garcia did that when Lucas Matisse won the fight, and Danny was sitting in public, and they was like, Lucas Matisse gonna fight Danny Garcia next. You saw Danny Garcia get up and walk up the steps and walk out. Right, Danny Garcia did the same thing. I was hard on Earl, and I said it too. I said, man, what Earl did was some whole shit. And the reason why I say that was they're gonna act. Of course, you know that they're gonna bring your name up, right? Now, Earl was not there because of Terence Crawford. Earl was there because of Shawn Porter. They are stable mates and they are friends. Shawn Porter's friends with almost everybody. He's a likable guy. So Earl was there to support his stable mate and his friend. But he was disgusted and upset what Kenny Porter did. And if you think, oh, well, ESPN is going to drive that narrative because that's the narrative they've been driving. Understand one thing: it was Terence Crawford that had been constantly telling us for I don't know how long. Hell, even when he interviewed Brian Custer, what did he say? He said, "Man, that fight will never happen. I don't care about that fight." And Brian Custer was like, "Really? Not even at 154?" He said, "No." He said, "No, I don't care about that fight. I put that fight behind me." Now, of course, the week of the fight with Porter, all of a sudden he's talking about Earl Spence. And even his criticism of Earl Spence, all he said was, man, that boy said he never come to one of my fights. Well, I guess if he get his tail out of his butt, he'll fight me, right? And for me, I'm like, no, man, you need to show some strength about it. I mean, if you truly want to be on him, you need to show some strength about it. The reason why I look at it now, because I wrote the article, 3kingsboxing.com, why Earl probably left. Earl didn't want to give something away, which is after the fight, we found out Terence Crawford is leaving Top Rank. Earl Spence, PBC, put out a tweet that said, what's next in the welterweight division? And they have a picture of Earl Spence and Terence Crawford. And Earl Spence retweeted that tweet. So after I saw that, I said, okay, that's probably why Earl left. Why? He didn't want to give something away. Earl didn't want to give something away. Because to say that, oh, he don't want to fight Terence Crawford. Earl Spence has said Terence Crawford 60-40 or 70-30 split. He said that. He's the first one that came out and said, man, listen, man, me and Terence Crawford fight 60-40, 70-30 split. It was Terence that said fight's not happening. Y'all thought it was me. That was Terence that said that. So Earl has already threw a shot out about what the split would be or what Terence need to accept. Earl's even said, man, my goal is to become undisputed. Me and Terence, we have to fight. So I'm not going to go along with ESPN. I mean, this is the same ESPN that did a Tyson Fury is the lineal champion. Teofimo Lopez is undisputed. Same ESPN that does that. So I'm not going to go along with what ESPN says. I felt it was just jacked up that he walked out and left like that because you knew that people was going to mention Terence Crawford. So at the very least, man, you should at least stayed in your seat. I'll stand by that. Even after what he did afterwards, I'll still stay, hey, man, he should at least stayed in that seat. He should at least sit right there and see, you know what I'm saying? Just sit right there and look at Crawford and just, all right, man, bet, and do something like that. He shouldn't have just got up and left, but he got up and left because he was upset and disgusted with what Kenny Porter did. Because again, Shawn is his friend, and he felt some kind of way about that. But at the same time, if you go to social media and you see what PBC put up, they put up PBC Fox. They had a picture of Shawn, of Terence Crawford and Earl Spence, looked like they were swinging punches at each other and was like, what's next in welterweight division? And then Earl Spence retweeted that. That tells you right there, and that's why in my article I said, that tells you right there that Crawford might be going over to PBC, a 1-fight, maybe a 2-fight deal. For me, if you're smart at PBC, it's a 3-fight deal. It's a 3-fight, $30 million, a 3-fight, $40 million deal. First fight, you fight Ugas. You get a belt. You get a belt. Now you got 2 belts. Spence got 2 belts. Now it's 50-50. 50-50 purse split. Next fight, you and Spence for undisputed. Then of course, rematch clause. Whoever wins gets a rematch. Now you can really sweeten the pot because if Spence win one and Crawford win one, well, we can have a third fight and everybody makes even more money. So if they're smart, like to me, this is the path that both these guys need to go because they can make a whole lot of money, build a legacy of them fighting each other. It's just like the Four Kings. It's just like the Rand, Hearns, Leonard, and Hagler. That's what they did. They went around fighting each other, rematching and fighting each other. And guess what? Made a boatload of money. You can do that right here, man. So him announcing he's leaving Top Rank, that was very, very telling. And that may be why Spence left because they don't want to give nothing away.
Logic says here in the YouTube chat that Crawford signing with PBC will be smart since all the titles at 147 and 154 on PBC. Maybe easier to make the fight than if independent. I'll go to you, Daniel. Now that Crawford announced after the fight that this is his last fight with Top Rank and he's leaving Aram. How much easier does it now make for a possible fight with Spence?
In theory, it should make it a lot easier. In theory, it should make things a lot easier because, and this is probably one of the things I'll disagree about because it could be a situation where it is an Errol Spence tweet and there's the PBC intern who we've known they've been pretty keen on keeping accounts of their fighters. Maybe that intern clicked in it just to drive up the talk, which is a smart move. However, unfortunately, is Bud in the same space right now as Canelo? No, because Canelo Canelo can pretty much go wherever he wants, and he'll make money. Bud doesn't have that luxury, unfortunately. So he has to sign long term to somebody. Now, obviously, the leading candidate is PBC because of the division of stakes. Almost all the belts are there. You're the only one that's not there. So it would make sense. But do not be surprised if Eddie Hearn or even Oscar De La Hoya start making a bid. Eddie Hearn because Eddie just likes to mess with things. And Oscar because he may see some flaws in Crawford's game and say, you know what, Virgil, I think you're ready to take that belt from Crawford. So we have to see parts in the running. In theory, it should make it, but we also have to take into the account Spence's health. Because at the rate, unfortunately, the way he's been injured, he's going to get at least one gimme fight in between. And who knows also as well that Top Rank wouldn't throw a Josh Taylor fight in front of him in the UK where they know that at that point they will bring the money because it'll be in the UK. So there's a lot of variables that fall into this. But we'll probably know by March next year what the move is going to be.
To your point, Logic, you say that Spence not stopping Porter or Garcia makes you believe that Crawford has power advantage, as seeing that he stops Garcia. In your opinion, I'm not sure about that, Logic, because say what you want about Danny Garcia and his flaws, right? The thing you can't knock him on is his toughness and his ability to take a punch. He's been in there with Thurman. He's been in there with Porter, right? He's been in there with just about everybody in the division, minus Bud, and he's gone the distance. Same with Porter. He's been in there with everyone, and yes, he got technically stopped, but I just don't think he was that hurt in the end against Bud. So I don't know how if that's a good marker, if that's a good indicator. But I see your point, and you saying that. I don't know, Daniel, if Aram has enough to, in terms of a fight, potential fight against Taylor, to spice up that kind of pot. Would Bud even be willing to go to Scotland or have that fight in England to fight a Taylor? Does De La Hoya, does Golden Boy at this point have enough cachet? And my apologies if you hear any background noise. Ambulances rolling through across the street. My apologies for that. I don't know if Golden Boy has that kind of cachet to, or even have the dollars in their stable to offer Bud that big fight. Is a fight against Virgil Ortiz worth it? I would think that there's still there's still Spence out there. That's still the biggest fight for him. And I think that's still the fight that could make him the most money. So in the end, it would make sense for Bud to sign a 2, 3 fight deal, or even fight with PBC on a fight by fight basis, with the goal getting a showdown and unification showdown with Errol Spence. A lot to discuss. We could do a lot more, but we got a lot on the docket here. So let's move on. The fight between Crawford and Porter took place on the 20th in Mandalay Bay. The previous evening, on the 19th, you had cards on the zone. Let's focus, Daniel. I go to you on this one, on Demetrius Andrade. Um, no, I'll go to Bo on this one because I know he's had, and folks at Three Kings has had a lot to say about Boo Boo Andrade. Fought Jason Quigley in New Hampshire, blew him away, knocked him out in 2 rounds. Don't have to discuss the fight. We saw what it was. We knew Andrade was the heavy favorite going in, and he did what he had to do. The the topic I want to just touch on is what happened after the fight, right? Andrade talked about, basically said, why does he have to keep calling out these guys?
Mm-hmm.
He's the undefeated fighter. He's the 2 division champion. It's known that he wants to fight these guys. Why don't Hearn or whoever make the steps to make that fight? Be it against be it against Canelo at 68, be it against Maul Charlo at 60, be it against Golovkin at 60. Golovkin, of course, is fighting Murata. I tend to agree with him. I don't care if Andrade is considered a lightning rod to many. He's deserving of those fights. Andrade, not Andrade, but Charlo. What is he doing? What is he doing except going on IG talking about how much money he has? Fight this dude. He's right there. He wants to fight you. We know the situation of Canelo, Triple G, and Murata. If I, dare if I'm Andrade, hell, I may go over to Japan and step to them after the fight. The bottom line for me is he 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 has it in him, as he has the ability to defeat these guys. He should be put in position to fight these guys. He deserves his opportunity, his chance for the big fight, be it at 60 or 68 pounds.
Well, one of the key things you said is opportunity. A person has to be given the opportunity. People say, who has he beat? What has he done? Well, we can always throw that into question if you don't give a guy the opportunity, right? If a guy isn't never given, like for example, Jerron Boots Enos, we can all sit here all day and talk about how good he is, but we can say, well, what has he done? Beat up a couple guys, knock out a couple guys nobody knocked out. We know he's better than these level fighters. Well, he has to be given the opportunity to show you what he can do. So for me, keep in mind, he didn't even mention Canelo Alvarez. He's not even talking about Canelo in the after fight. He's talking about the guys in his division. Those are the guys that they need to make the fight. And he's 100% right, because he did what he needed to do. Listen, he held up his hand. He ran over Jason Quigley. No one has done that to Jason Quigley. Jason Quigley has been, I think he has one loss. I think he was stopped, but it was in a late fight. It was in the later rounds of the fight. Well, Demetrius Andrade out the gate came out and jumped on Jason Quigley, knocked him down the first, then got him out of there in the second. Okay? So he did his part. With everybody watching in front of the hometown crowd, he got a guy out of there that doesn't deserve to be in a ring with him. So that part he did. And him calling out the commentator like he did, he was right to do that. Why? because it's a known fact that Chris Mannix, punk ass, has said things about not just Boo Boo, but hell, even Devin Haney when Ryan Garcia beat Luke Campbell. He was like, "Hey man, this guy is beyond titles. He don't have to fight for titles. He's beyond titles." And they was like, "Well, what about Devin Haney? He's the mandatory." He said, "Who cares about that?" And I remember saying to myself, I remember saying live, "Hey man, if I was on Devin Haney team, I heard that, I'd slap the hell out of Chris Mannix." Because that's the problem with boxing right now. And that's what Demetrius Andrade was calling out. Y'all need to tell your fighters to fight these, to make these fights. Because guarantee you, like he said, what has Rocky Fielding done to deserve that? And he hasn't. What has, like people say, what has Demetrius Andrade done since Canelo left the division? Well, what has any of them motherfuckers done since Canelo left the division? What have any of their asses done? The thing why I'm so talking about Andrade is this: Canelo Alvarez could have became the first 4-belt middleweight undisputed champion. He beat Daniel Jacobs. He had 3 of the belts. Andrade was the last piece of that puzzle. He did not go for it. So what was the difference between going for it in super middleweight than what it was? Because he was much closer to undisputed when he was at middleweight than he was at super middleweight. Much closer. So at the end of the day, now we have fresh blood, I guess, what you want to say, or new blood or whatever in the division. Well, these guys need to fight. And if you don't want to fight him, there was a guy that was on the undercard last night, Generic. I can't pronounce his last name, but Generic.
Janabek Alam Kanuli.
Right, Generic Alakanuli. Hey man, if you can't get none of them, get that guy. We all just saw him last night. We all saw how good he was. We all saw his power. Hey, if you can't get them guys, there you go. There's your next top opponent right there that you can fight. You can fight Janabek Alantoli. You can fight that guy right there, and then be like, all right, now I finally beat a top dude or quality cat to shut y'all mouths. So yeah, man, for me, these guys need to fight. And this whole, that's what's wrong with boxing right now. And I've said it before, man. What if Marvin Hagler would have told Sugar Ray Leonard when Leonard came out of retirement, told him I want to fight? What if Marvin Hagler would have told him, no, man, you come out of retirement, man, you got to prove, man, you got to prove, you got to prove yourself to me, man. You got to do more than that. What if Marvin Hagler would have told him that, man? What if any of these fighters, these great fighters, what if Gennaro Hernandez would have told Floyd Mayweather, no, man, you got to do more than that, man. You got to prove yourself. That shouldn't be the talk, man. If this guy is giving us the eye test that he's above the C and B level guys, then yeah, man, he needs to be in their ring, because when it came to Gennady Golovkin, that's how everybody felt. And Gennady Golovkin definitely was not out there beating killers like that. So these guys need to fight each other, man. Charlo is not busy right now. At least Gennady Golovkin and Ron Murata are fighting each other. I give him that. Charlo's not busy right now. Hey, man, go ahead on and fight Demetrius Andrade. And this notion that if you lose to a guy, it diminishes you. No, it doesn't. Like, I don't understand that with these dudes. Maybe somebody needs to take them to the Hall of Fame and show them everybody's record in the Hall of Fame. Motherfuckers took losses. So, but if you want to build your legacy, you can make money by fighting this dude. Fight him, and you'll make money by fighting him. You'll make more money by fighting him, and then if you lose, rematch him. Rematch him. That's what Tommy Hearns and Sugar Ray Leonard did and made money. So, like I said, man, these that's the problem with boxing nowadays, man. Fighters don't want to take that risk, and maybe and part of it is because they are getting paid way too much already. So why take that risk? And it's more I can say, but they need to fight, man. That's all I can say, Mike.
A couple of options here from the Logic presented in the chat. He said that Benavidez has called out Andrade. Does Andrade back up his talk and go up to 168? Boogeyman versus Boogeyman. He also mentioned Arislandi Lara would give Andrade credence if he beats him in more impressive fashion than Melo did. Thoughts about if he can't get the fight with if Andrade can't get the fight with a Canelo or Charlo or Golovkin, say maybe going up to 68 and fighting Benavidez, or staying at 160 and fighting Lara. Bo.
Oh well, Lauda ain't gonna fight him. Don't even get me started on Edislani Lauda. You don't want to get me started on him, man. Listen, Edislani Lauda put out a tweet a long time ago, and I'll never forget this. Edislani Lauda said, in fact, I think it was 2015 to 2016, because I remember this. I was in the Dominican Republic, and Edislani Lauda said that I told my team, get me the Andrade fight. Careful what you wish for. I'm gonna put you in the box. Merry Christmas. Nothing. No, nothing happened. Hell, Demetrius Andrade even won the regular title, hoping to get a shot at Eslandi Lara. So I don't think Lara fight him. But David Benavidez, I like that fight. A catch weight, I like that fight. You can do a catch weight, 164 catch weight with David Benavidez. You won't lose your title. You keep your title, and you can fight David Benavidez, and Benavidez will take that fight. I like that.
Ooh, awesome take for Lee Gross. Shout out to Lee Gross for joining us. He says, good evening. It is true. If today's fighters were paid like Moore and Robinson were, they'd fight 15 times a year as well. If Moore and Sugar Ray Robinson were paid as they are now, it's twice a year. Your thoughts on that, Bo, right quick before I go to Daniel?
Yes and no. I think the problem that you do, I think that I don't think these guys would fight that much, like 15 fights a year. I think these guys, because mind you, a lot of those fights in between there were not like, the top level guys. But I think if those like Moore and Sugar Ray Robinson, all those guys, I think if they were paid what these guys are paid, they wouldn't fight 15 times a year, but they would definitely fight more than at least twice, because these guys really was all about competition. I mean, of course that's a debatable topic, because it could go either way. But no, guys like Sugar Ray Robinson, Moore, Hagler and all those guys, they were all about that proving I'm the best. So if another guy came along, people thought they were the best, they had to get that guy. So yeah, I think guys like that were just built differently. That's all.
You listen to episode 344 of the Pound for Pound Boxing Report. This is your host, Michael. Joining me this evening, both from Truth and Facts, as well as Three Kings Boxing, Daniel from the Inscriber and Fort Boxing News. I'm going to you, Daniel, to talk about some fights on this Andrade Quigley undercard. And fight that's been postponed, pushed back quite often was Julio Cesar Martinez fighting McWilliams Arroyo. I believe this was a mandatory defense. Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, they finally got in the ring. They finally fought after that fight being postponed to injury suffered by the champ. Didn't last long, but it was really, really exciting. Both fighters put each other down in round one. The fight was stopped in round two due to a cut suffered by Arroyo. So it was a no decision. Do I think they'll try to fight again? No. But the issue that's in my mind in the aftermath, when Martinez came on the scene, first in his kind of disqualification against Charlie Edwards, and then ultimately winning the vacant belt because Edwards decided to vacate the title, then rather than get in there with Martinez again, he looked like he was just going to be a beast at the smaller weight divisions. In subsequent fights, dare I suggest he's being exposed a bit. He got knocked down in this fight. He's been buzzed in a couple of other fights. I used to think that have a strong argument that Julio Cesar Martinez is the best in the world at 112, given the lock-in who also fought over the weekend. He easy win over Luis Concepcion. Just beat him the pillar of the post, and especially with Juka Nakatani, what he did to Angel Acosta. Nakatani, by the way, and you can find this article on ThreeKingsBoxing.com. He's going to fight on the Golovkin Murata undercard. I know, long-winded way of saying, Daniel, I no longer think that Martinez is the best flyweight in the world. Your thoughts on him, especially in the aftermath of this fight against McWilliams Arroyo?
Unfortunately, there wasn't a lot to see out of this fight. You mentioned it. Both of them got knocked down. It started to look like a real good fight, and then that cut happened. And granted, there was a little bit of controversy as to whether or not Arroyo quote unquote quit, because there's some people that said that he told the doctor he couldn't see, or told his corner he couldn't see. And when asking the doctor, like the doctor supposedly tried to give him a chance, and he said, "No, I can't see." So there's a little bit of controversy in that front, but there's not much you can say when it comes into that division, unfortunately. That short of a rematch, which I don't think they'll do, unfortunately, I agree with you. There's not much you can say about Martinez that we haven't already seen, and unfortunately, the more this goes on, he's gonna get caught by somebody. I thought it was gonna be Arroyo this time, if it wasn't for that cut. But we have to wait and see.
That was it, Daniel.
Yeah, that
Sorry, I
was
was
what I
on.
was gonna.
Sorry, I was on mute, fellas. Just read some comments here from the chat. Logic says the fact that Hearn can't make Triple G and Andrade and didn't back up Andrade one bit when Andrade crashed the Canelo post-fight conference shows that he ain't got that push from the promoter. Absolutely right. I agree. Logic also says 2021 boxing has been on fire. I wouldn't say fire. It's been good. Had been fire. We got Fulton Figueroa unification next week. Fulton should win this one. I wouldn't be so sure about that either. With his skills, Lee says that back then a single loss didn't have the stigma that a loss today does now, probably because they had another fight in the following week. That's true. Hira lost sticks for months, if not years, due to the schedule. Um, Logic says there's some fights hadn't heard of any big fights coming up in 2022. There has. My mind is on brain freeze right now, but there are some big fights that's being lined up for 2022. Some other comments here from Lee as well. I'll go to you on Bo. Talk about another fight on this card. Look, Akhmadaliev, Akhmadaliev, who's the unified champion at 122 pounds, WBA IBF. Look, given the allotment of fighters, let's just say from 112 to 122, 126, a lot of people talk about Inoue. A lot of people talk about Estrada and Roman, right? From a truly international perspective, you got Ioka here in Japan. Is MJ, in spite the fact that he's a unified champion, is he the fighter most being ignored within that lot?
Uh, no, not at all. Because you got a guy who wants to fight MJ, but he kind of got jerked around a little bit in Ra and Rais Alim. Rais Alim, they knew he had signed to fight this BS cat. And then what happened was, I think one of the Brandon Figueroa caught COVID. They pushed the fight off, and the WBA was like, "Well, you got to fight this eliminator and against Havanesian." And he's just like, "Well, man, I got this fight right here. It's locked up," and he pulled out of it. I don't think MJ is being ignored. I think whoever wins between Fulton and Figueroa is going to wind up fighting him. So you have that, but I think that when you look at the 122-pound division, as deep as it appears, there are some fights in that division that when I hear them, they sound good, but then it's like, okay, they sound good. They ain't no jump up out of my seat type fights, right? Like Fulton Figueroa, I liked it. I actually like this fight. I really do like this fight, right? Now, whoever between them want to fight MJ, I like that fight. I like it, but these are no jump up out of my seat fights for me, right? At 122. And maybe, and it's not that 122 is not talented, it's very talented, very deep. It's just that I actually would jump up more with Brandon Figueroa and Stephen Fulton, right? And given the performance that MJ just had, okay, it's like, okay, you know. And I think that's the thing. This is why it's important. You got to get guys out of there that don't belong in the ring with you, because what happens is, and don't get me wrong, I think that whoever wins between Fulton and Figueroa is going to be a great fight with MJ. So don't get me twisted right there. But I'm just saying, after MJ's performance, although he was in there with a tough guy and a replacement fighter, but his skill set and everything else should have been able to get this dude out of that ring. The guy wound up going 12 rounds with him. And that's why I'm just like, okay, Okay. Now, if Brandon Figueroa have a dud, hopefully they don't have a dud. But let's say Stephen Fulton and the winner of that knocks the other guy out. Then it'll be like, all right, there, I'm excited for him jumping out of my seat. So there's a lot of fights there. There's a lot of guys there. Uh, and I just think, these guys got to start making some moves at that division to actually light that division up on fire. And it's a good move that we are going to possibly be one fight away from undisputed. But Daniel Romam and Tommy Patrick Ward, hey man, why don't y'all guys go ahead on and fight? Angela Leo and Ronnie Rios. Hey man, why don't you guys make a motherfucking fight? Like it's got to be more movement going on down there in that division, so people will be more excited about that division and what's to come. Because right now everybody's just focusing on those three guys. So you know, I mean, once upon a time I thought MJ was the best fighter at 122. I don't know that, but I don't know now because Stephen Fulton's coming on and Figueroa is pretty good too. So we'll see.
In terms of your question, logic, in terms of who we got in Fulton Figueroa, be patient, be patient. We're going to talk about that during our preview segment. Um, let's move to. Give me a quick second here. Let's move back a couple of weeks and go to the UK, Manchester, England, and I'll go to you, Daniel. Kick Galahad, he finally got his world title, beating Jaza Dickens in the rematch, first title defense, and he was winning against Kiko Martinez for the first three plus almost 4 rounds. But at the end of the fourth round, he got caught with a hellacious right hand that stiffened him like a jolt. Uh, Straight on at the beginning of round five, the second right hand, similar, put him down and out. And say what you want about Kiko Martinez, this dude is like Bebe's kid. He don't die. He just comes back and multiplies every time. Oh my gosh! Just when you think he's done, he surprises. Yeah, that was a bit shocking.
Oh wow. It's just the way that punch landed at the end of the fourth round. And you knew it was bad because he wasn't going to recover just in that 1 minute. And it showed clearly right at the start of the fifth round. Just took one right hand and he's out. And full respect to Kiko Martinez, like I said, last time we previewed this fight, we didn't give him much of a chance, unfortunately, because he has been through some wars. He has been close some areas, but no cigar in some of them. But at the end of the day, it is boxing. All it takes is one punch to completely change a narrative because we saw like the first 4 rounds, Kid Galahad was winning that fight. He was getting comfortable. He was changing stances. He was making Kiko miss, but it just takes one to land. Now, does this put Galahad in the situation like what Amir Khan got put in when he got knocked out by British Prescott? Does he not get the reputation that maybe he may get a weak chin if you hit him hard enough? We don't know. But ultimately, it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to pair up Martinez at featherweight because it is the IBF. And if this is my understanding, this was a voluntary defense.
Yeah.
So we have to look at the standards within by IBF because Kiko might be wind up finding a mandatory. And who knows? They may get a rematch. And Galahad just has to change the fact that he has to be a bit more careful about letting him land that overhand right. Because otherwise, he was winning the fight in almost every respect. Ring generalship, combinations, defense. Up to that point, he was winning that fight.
Um, on that same card, Bo, I'll just say last time I had a show, we talked about this fight a lot between Terri Harper, uh, putting her WBC women's junior lightweight title on the line against Alycia Baumgardner. Um, Baumgardner did a lot of talking before the fight, and you have to say she backed it up. Um, it wasn't her boxing ability to me that served the difference against Harper. One, Harper was coming off nearly a year-long layoff, but two, and more importantly, the power. The power. She got to Harper with hard shots. Harper was buzzed in the first round, hurt in the second round, finished her off in the fourth, basically had Harper out on her feet after a counter right hand. And it ain't bragging if you can back it up. And Alycia Baumgardner, to her credit, she backed it up, and now she's the new champion.
Yeah. It ain't bragging if you can back it up. You're absolutely right about that. But this just goes to something that I said. I said a while back about Eddie Hearns. Poor matchmaking. Poor matchmaking, man. These guys, like somebody should have really looked at Alycia Baumgardner and been like, all right, this girl has power, right? She did lose to Christine Linden Dartau. That was the only top level fighter she fought. And then, but what do we always say? Sometimes you got to see that level. You got to see that level. Sometimes you got to see that level in order for you to gauge where you are, and then you get better. That was my biggest knock on Gennady Golovkin. I said, man, he should have took up Andre Ward on fighting him because he'd have seen that level. And whether you win or lose, you'd have seen that level, and you could have had a chance to become better. That's what look at what Canelo Alvarez has done since fighting Floyd Mayweather. He saw that level, and look at where he is because of it. Right now, he's levels ahead of all of the guys he's faced because he's already been there and seen that level. So, Terri Harper, though, this was a bad fight because you had a very aggressive, uh, someone who hits hard, female fighter.
And if you watch the weigh-in, Baumgartner's a bigger woman.
Mhm.
Overall, a larger woman. You can tell looking at her legs, the waist up, the torso. She had wide shoulders, broad back. Yeah, she's just a physically bigger woman, and just on her looks alone, you got the sense that when she talked about her power, she just wasn't she wasn't kidding about that, and it showed itself on the night.
Yeah, and then like I said, and this is why I say matchmaking. Terri Harper was coming off of an injury. Terri Harper was, having other outside issues. So she wasn't, I don't think she was mentally right yet because she's always, like this is another injury she suffered. And during times when fighters are injuries, right, it gives them time to think. So she's having these injuries. You got this tournament coming up. She's probably not sure if she wants to continue fighting. She's probably questioning her body's breaking down. How long have I been doing this? Maybe it's time. All kind of things start going through your head. I don't think Alycia Baumgardner was the fighter you should have put her in the ring with coming off of the injury, not particularly fully sure about herself. And when people say, well, yeah, she said it. If you look at that weigh in, she didn't look sure about herself at all. I didn't like her body language at that weigh in. I didn't like Terri Harper's body language. And then Terri Harper said something that I didn't like either. Terri Harper said, this is what she said. She said, well, we're fighting Alycia Baumgardner because, she's everybody knows her. She's a popular girl. I'm like, okay, so you think you picking someone that is popular because you think that this would be, easy pickings. She didn't say we picked Alycia Baumgardner because she's a tough opponent. We feel, she'll give me the fight I need. She'll push me to the limit. She said, well, we picked her because she's popular. That tells me you thought you was picking a non-dangerous opponent. So it was just this bad matchup. Like somebody should have looked at this and been like, no. But props to Alycia Baumgardner, man. She's been wanting to get in the ring with one of these girls and gets this fight, and she took advantage of the opportunity, man. Terri Harper. Oh, by the way,
Quick, quick,
Terri Harper may retire. Terri Harper may retire, man. I wouldn't be shocked if she did.
quick follow up. Um, um, Michaela Mayer and Baumgardner, even before this fight, has been doing plenty of talking about fighting each other. The same thing happened, popped up again after this fight. Should I'm assuming that Hearn is going to promote, probably has some stock in Baumgardner. Now, do we need to see that fight, Baumgardner and Harper, ASAP in 2022?
If they're gonna rematch, do it right away. Because if you give Harper time to think, she might retire. But they're gonna
I mean,
rematch.
not Harper and Baumgardner. I mean Mayer and Baumgardner. My bad.
Oh man, most definitely, you got to make that fight, or make Baumgartner versus Cho, and then the winner fights Mayer. But you got to continue on with undisputed. Like Harper has a rematch clause, so we got to see what she's. I mean, yeah, Harper has a rematch clause, so we got to see what she's gonna do. But I'm not. I don't think you should be wasting a lot of time waiting to see what it is she's gonna do. Like, what is it, November? Okay, so give her to January. And say, all right, what are you gonna do? Because we got to keep on moving towards undisputed.
Um, on a separate card that took place also on the 19th, Daniel, we mentioned how Andrade is kind of a boogeyman at 160 pounds. Logic mentioned him fighting a Benavidez, who's considered another boogeyman at 168. But David Benavidez did what he had to do, stopping Kyrone Davis, I want to say, in 7 rounds. He's talked about a fight against Canelo. He wants that badly. He's basically punking Jamal Charlo right now online, right? Called him a pussy in the ring after the fight. The question for you, Daniel, is will Benavidez finally get will Benavidez get one of those fights in 2022, being against Canelo at 68, or somehow find a way to entice Mal Charlo up from middleweight? Or another option, could he fight Plant, who he also has been talked about extensively?
That's difficult because I know we're going to talk about it in the news segment, but Canelo may not be looking at that part of the way. We also have to remember, I forgot the interview where he said that he would never fight another Mexican for a title.
But that's some bullshit, though, Daniel.
But that's
That's
one thing.
bullshit, though.
I know, but that's one thing. But I don't know what we'll talk about in the news when it comes into it, because there's some other theories when it comes into that. But Maul is going to be interesting because Maul has been having issues putting away opponents at middleweight. He hasn't been looking as fresh as you would expect him to do. And
Probably because he has issues making the weight despite his denials.
yep. And well, he can use the WBC's rules in trying to challenge Canelo outright, but like we mentioned, there's could be some other issues falling into it. I think probably the likeliest scenario, unfortunately, for Benavidez is the Plant fight, because number one, those two have been jabbing at each other for a while, and two, when it comes into those type of fights, PBC has leaned more towards making those type of like grudge match fights that don't really make major consequences unless they control the major champion estate, and right now they don't. So with Benavidez, like that's Plant's going to be the likely outcome. We all know we want to see with Canelo. He is the only viable opponent at 168 for Canelo. But like I said, we'll leave that to the news segment.
One more fight here, Bo. Jaime Munguia. I think he's number 1 or 2 contender. At 160 pounds at WBO. Fought Gabe Rosado. Main event on the Golden Boy card. Good fight, entertaining fight. But I'm thinking, okay, Munguia won, but in comparing him to the best at 160 pounds, he's one of the prized pupils of the stable. But I'm like, he's a level below. I think he's a level below Golovkin. He's highly ranked. If Eddie Hearn was smart, he would put Charlo in the ring, try to make a match between Andrade. Excuse me. He'll make a match between Andrade and Munguia. I think he boxed his shoes off. Decent win, good fight, but I'm like, okay, he's highly ranked, but eh, I'm pretty much just when it comes to him. I'm pretty mid.
Mhm. Well, and for good reason, because they could fight Andre right now. They chose not to. Well, Jaime Munguia moved up from 154 pounds. He was the WBO champion. He moved up. WBO made him the mandatory, and he decided, I'm gonna go elsewhere. He's ranked number one by the WBC. The WBC ordered that he fight Derevyanchenko once before, and they won. They fought Gabe Rosado. Now the WBC ordered him and Derevyanchenko again. Like why? Why? And they're even talking about maybe we need to fight and eliminate. Why? You can fight Demetrius Andrade for a title right now. They're not doing that because Golden Boy don't want to risk Jaime Munguia. They got plans for Jaime Munguia, and it doesn't involve him taking a loss to Demetrius Andrade. I don't even think it probably involves him taking a loss to Charlo. So they got different plans for him. I think they want him to fight the winner of Gennady Golovkin and Mariuta Murata because that would be the quickest path to them thinking an easier path for him winning the championship. Murata, when we saw him lose to I think was it Rob Brandt that beat him?
Yeah,
Okay. He's lost to Rob Brandt, so we've seen that he can be beaten, and then Gennady Golovkin looks to be slipping. So, I think that's what they're waiting on. So I'm not surprised at what's going on. And it's not up to Eddie Hearns to make Munguia fight him. There has to be Golden Boy that has to allow that. What Eddie Hearns needs to do though, he needs to get at Golden Boy about making that fight and make it public like he did Charlo. When he told us how he sent him a contract, he need to get at him to make the fight, and then when they refuse it, he needs to make that public. Like we gotta start putting pressure on these guys to make these fights because it makes no sense for Jaime Munguia to not be fighting for a title. It makes no sense.
yeah,
Yeah, you need to go for a title. I don't need to see your former champion. You shouldn't be fighting contenders and eliminators. You should be moving to fight for another title. So, but yeah, I mean, but yeah, that's not up to Eddie Hearn. That's up to the other promoters to do that. And right now, it's just not sexy to lose to a Demetrius Andrade.
you're right. You're right. Just being hopeful here. You sounds like they are indeed Golden Boy. They are indeed protecting Munguia in hopes of him fighting the winner of Golovkin and Murata, who's going to fight on December 29th. Logic says here in the chat, he says that Jamal Charlo is all talk. He called out Jacobs, Andrade, and Benavidez only to get stepped to and punk out. He also says that he thinks that Plant beats Chamorro. I can understand why he says that. He said that Plant and Andrade are defensive chess match. Benavidez over all of them. I agree with you on that. Um, he also says that what he thinks that Munguia beats Jamal. I disagree with that. I think that Jamal Charlo would beat Munguia. Munguia is just too susceptible defensively. He says, especially after Jamal's fight with Montiel, WBC mandated winner of Deverenchenko Munguia fight Charlo. Sounds reasonable. I just don't think it will happen. Um, he also says, lastly, are we basing Triple G slipping based on the Deverenchenko fight? I believe fighters have off nights. Korobov, Charles, Jamal was close. Age a factor, though. It's not just the Deverenchenko fight logic. I think it's the past 2, 3 fights. Steve Rolls, he got off to a slow start before he finished him off in 4. The Deverenchenko fight where he says he was sick, but I don't care what they. I don't care. He got beat that fight. He got beat that night. He got hurt that night. He looked like the loser at the end. And even in his last fight, he won. But okay, don't ask me to congratulate him on doing what he was supposed to do. So that's okay. Shoulder shrug in terms of his last fight. No, I think that he has shown some signs of slippage. Will it show up against Murata? Who knows? Murata himself is coming off of a long layoff. But to your point, to your question, Logic, I do think he has shown some sign of age. It's not just based on the Derevyanchenko fight. It's based on some other fights in and around Derevyanchenko. Let's move on to some news here. We've been hitting at this, and I'll go to you on this one, Daniel. At the WBC convention, um, Suleiman gave the okay, essentially, for Canelo to try to engage in a fight negotiate a fight with WBC cruiserweight champion Junior Makabu, and opinions vary on this one. Some are giving Canelo credit for moving up and trying to seek another title and win a world title in the fifth division. My thing is, okay, but it's Junior Makabu. Who asked for Junior Makabu? If you're going to go for a cruiserweight belt, go for the best cruiserweight. If you're going to go that route, that's either here or there. There's still a bunch of options for him in and around his weight range, be it fighters at 60 who want to move up to fight him, fighters at 68, namely David Benavidez, or fighters at 175, namely Berdybiev, who's unified champion WBC IBF, or Demetrius Bivol, who would love to fight Canelo at 75 or 68. Again, I asked Daniel, Makabu, who asked for this and who really wants it?
Nobody really asked for this. And the way it's been reported that this was done, it was apparently during the meeting, Samak Wickwitz, Benavidez' promoter, was in line right behind Reynoso, getting ready to petition Benavidez to be made Canelo's mandatory at super middleweight. And the scuttlebutt is being that Reynoso saw that and he made this move. Because like I mentioned before, part of it is Canelo supposedly not wanting to fight another Mexican when it comes to a title or for legacy. That's one thing. But the second thing about it also could be, and this is my own speculation. Maybe he really wasn't happy with the cut that he got from the PBC now Heyman for the planned fight. And he doesn't want to be put in the position where he's mandated to deal with Al Heyman again. In this situation, he'd rather deal with Al Heyman on his own terms rather than be mandated to do it. Now, what's probably going to wind up happening in this sense is this fight's never going to happen. Either other challengers are going to step in, they're going to take the cut that Canelo's going to tell them they're going to take, or in certain cases, like I said, other promoter's going to throw him a big lot of money, because right now he's seen what Eddie Hearn's been able to do. He's seen what Al Heyman's going to do. Now it's probably going to be Bob Arum's turn. And Bob Arum's term is normally with Beterbiev. So that's probably going to be the route that they're going to go with, because Beterbiev is the WBC champion at light heavyweight. And unfortunately, he is also a man whose body is breaking down before our eyes. So there's going to be that scenario to fall into it. This is just probably like a poker chip that's just been put on the table, probably letting the PBC know, you're not going to force me to fight your fighters. I will fight your fighters when I want to.
I know, Bo, and logic here says that legacy-wise, Canelo has more to gain jumping two weight classes to win a fifth world title than beating Benavidez. He also says that does Canelo stay a cruiserweight or drop down to 175? I think he goes down to 175 where Benavidez should be there. I disagree logic. Legacy wise, he would gain a lot more respect if he was to say go to 175, fight beat Berdaviev, fight beat Bival, than he could moving up to fight than any uh, uh, gaining a belt at cruiserweight. No, 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 no. Especially against the Makabu. So respectfully, I disagree with that viewpoint. I go to you on this one, Bo. You and 2K had a very extensive, detailed conversation about this on the podcast earlier this week. I'm just going to give the floor to you to give your opinions on this one because again, this move, if it comes off, not only does not make sense, I just don't like it. I just don't like it.
Yeah. Here's the thing, and I hear what Daniel's saying. I don't think it's so much as him not wanting to be forced to deal with the PBC. More so as he don't want to fight David Benavidez. Mind you, it was that same David Benavidez that once he no longer had that belt, the WBC belt, Canelo quickly jumped at fighting for that belt and had it put in the fight with him and Callum Smith. So let's keep that in mind. And if he says, "Hey, I'll never fight another Mexican," well then that's bullshit. So which Mexican are we talking about? Mexican from Mexico or Mexican American? So you just eliminated an entire freaking culture for whatever reason. Makes no damn sense to me, especially when Benavidez is, and I've always felt that, hey man, from the eye test, he was the best super middleweight to me. I thought Benavidez beat all of them guys, right? But I see what logic is saying from a legacy standpoint. Yeah, him fighting the cruiserweight to win a fifth title. Understand, Canelo Alvarez is wearing Margarito loaded gloves and stacking the deck on his argument about being the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. That's what he's doing. That's why he's fighting Makabu. I don't think there's been a Mexican. I don't think there's ever been a Mexican undisputed champion, let alone he's the first ever super middleweight champion, let alone a Mexican ever win titles in 5 different weight divisions. So he's stacking the deck at the argument of being the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. That's what Canelo Alvarez is doing. He's wearing Antonio Margarito loaded gloves to stack that deck, right? Because he's not going to stay at cruiserweight. He's not. He's not going to do it. And the only reason why I'm questioning Makabu is the person that put the idea out there in the air of fighting the cruiserweight was Marius Bradis. Marius Bradis said, why don't you come test your mettle? But here's why I believe he picked Makabu. Number one, he picked Makabu because it's an easier fight. Makabu is not as big of a threat as I think people believe he is. I've seen Makabu fight. I've saw what he's done. No. But number two, Makabu will also be weight drained coming into that fight. Because of the Bridgerweight division, the cruiserweight weight limit for the WBC is 190 pounds. Anything over 190 pounds is considered now Bridgerweight. So he'll have an advantage there because he's an inactive champion, hasn't fought none this year, right? He's an older champion, right? From a skill set standpoint, I don't think there's anything he does that Canelo can't deal with. And then on top of that, he'll probably be weight drained. So you have
Which
that.
would not help his chin, which is leaking to begin with.
Yeah, right. Because I thought he got hurt real bad and almost he got hurt real bad against Papin in round 3, and Papin had him out on his feet in round 12 before that bell rang. So Canelo Alvarez knows what he's doing. He's the way he's moving. He's moving. Now it's interesting he mentions David Benavidez going to 175 because David Benavidez in an interview, and I actually wrote on that, he said that if that's what he'll have to do to go to 175 and grab a belt, fuck it, I'll go to 175. That's a smart move because if he goes to 175, the WBC probably will rank him high. He fights one fight. Now he's mandatory for Artur Beterbiev, who's a unified champion. I think he has the IBF and WBC. So he has the WBC and IBF, I believe. Let me make sure. Joe Smith Jr. has the WBO. Yeah,
Beterbiev,
IBF.
WBC, IBF,
IBF.
WBC,
Okay.
yeah.
So David Benavidez could fight him. Now he has 2 belts. Now Canelo got to make a decision. What do I do? Because once he fights Makabu, I don't think he makes 168. I think his body is gonna be like, no, I can't make 168 no more. It's gonna have to be 175, or you're gonna have to start catch weighting guys. But then there's another thing. Canelo Alvarez, man, could fight Makabu and then dip. I mean, dip out the sport. He really can, because he can say, man, I've done everything. I've done everything. I've been an undisputed champion. I've 5 division world champion, the face of boxing. I've done it all. I'm married now. I have, I have my television thing going, contract and stuff going. I have my child. I could work with Eddie Reynoso to help build new fighters. Yeah, I'm done. He could do that. Understand the power of Canelo Alvarez, man. Canelo Alvarez just skipped the whole negotiating process. He had his trainer tell the president of the WBC of a fight he want, and they put it out there in the ether. Nobody talked to Makabu's people. They just put that out there in the ether. So the power of him is just ridiculous. But if I could see Canelo doing this and then dipping out the sport. I really could see that,
To your question, Logic says, given your scenario, if Canelo steps out, and this you can answer this as well, Daniel. If Canelo steps out, who takes his place as the face of boxing?
Well, the beauty part about that is that's what would make all these motherfuckers fight, because all of them are trying to be the face of boxing. Remember when Floyd Mayweather retired? That's when you had Thurman and Garcia and Thurman and Porter and Garcia. That's when you had them dudes fighting, because that guy left. So they all started fighting to take the place of, okay, now I'm the guy. And I think that's what would need to happen. So these guys will start fighting each other so they could be like, okay, now I'm the face. Understand one thing, and I felt this way about Floyd, the same way about Oscar De La Hoya, except in his era, at least he, made fights and fights were getting made. When you have one guy who is considered the money guy, it holds up a lot of fights, because Canelo has 154 to 175 locked up. Nobody wants to make a move because they wondering if they're going to get a Canelo Alvarez fight. Same thing with Floyd Mayweather. I remember when Miguel Cotto had a fight coming up and Pacquiao and Floyd got canceled. Miguel Cotto said, hold on, wait a minute. I'm not going to sign the contract yet. Floyd might call. Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith was about to fight each other until Canelo Alvarez's division. They backed out. They fight. Oh, wait a minute. Canelo Alvarez might call. When you have that face of boxing, where you get that bag, it holds up the sport. And the funny thing about it is, them guys, they're better off fighting each other, because that's really how you would get the fight. You guys got to fight each other, because if you don't fight each other, it's like, okay, like people look at this and be like, okay, just like they're saying, like if you too good and you ain't fought nobody, it's what they're gonna say, right? Luckily, Canelo won the undisputed, so these guys were able to do it and they fought each other. But you still got the guys at 160 holding out for maybe a Canelo fight. Then you got guys at 175 that's holding out. And then trust me, if he fights Makabu, I don't expect there to be a unification at cruiserweight, because guess what? They're gonna wait to see what he's gonna do next. So I've always said that, man, when you got a guy who is the money guy, he can kind of hold up a lot of movement in the sport. So if Canelo leaves, that's what the beautiful thing about it is. It'll be open for looking for the face of boxing. All these guys have to fight each other, and then we'll start getting, hopefully we'll start getting great fights.
Your response to Logic's question, Daniel.
As bluntly as I'll say this, and as coarse as I'll say this, as long as he doesn't get a hold of crack, Tyson Fury. Because Tyson Fury has the mouth. He has a personality. He's already introduced himself to an American audience. And he's pretty close to being undisputed as well. All we have to do is see what's going to happen with the rematch with Joshua and Usyk. So he's the closest thing to it from a marketing and a mainstream standpoint. Who would it be long term? That is going to be interesting, because unfortunately the welterweight division hasn't gotten to the point where you can say Bud or Spence will be the face. Middleweight division nowhere near that, and not enough people are going to say the winner of Chocolatito Strata 3, even though they may have earned it from a technical standpoint. So, in that sense, I would say Fury in the immediate future, so long as he keeps his nose clean. If he catches something, then it's a free for all, and that's where I agree with Bo, because at that point, then you have to make the fights around 160, around 168, around 175, because at that point, then you're no longer stopped because you're waiting to see what Canelo's going to do. And like I said, the cruiserweights, they'll handle themselves just fine because, like I said before, I do not think the Makabu fight's actually going to happen. To me, it's a negotiating play. It's just a way just to make sure that you don't force anything on me. You guys will come down to my level. You guys will take the cut that I tell you to take, and then we'll make the fight. And then Makabu, and that part I feel bad for Makabu. He's just being used as a bargaining chip in this. But yeah, it would be Fury.
Yeah, to your another comment here, you says Logic says crazy thing. Mello isn't responsible for holding up the lightweights and welterweights from making the big fights. Context is key. Context is key. Logic. I hear your comment, but I don't know if that's fair because the fact that Spence, Crawford, the quartet at lightweight, that's on them. That's on them. So I don't know how Canelo gets into that. That's just strictly on them. I mean, Garcia talks about wanting to fight Tank, hasn't happened. Teofimo and Haney, been barking at each other at fights, hasn't happened. Javante Davis, hell, that's as much on Floyd than anything else. And we discussed earlier the situation between Crawford and Spence and how it would be a shame on I hate using this comments because of what we've been dealing with in the White House the previous 4 years on both sides. So I don't know how Canelo has anything to do with that, but he does have some role in terms of what's around him, particularly at 160 and 168 and 175, and even using Makabu as a bargaining chip to Daniel's part doesn't help that situation. To me, it draws more criticism Canelo's way because, again, before we move on to preview some fights here, who wants this? Who is asking for this? Yeah, certainly sounds like a ploy to me. Sounds like clickbait.
Well, hold on, no, Mike. I have to correct him on something. He said making big fights. Yeah, Vasil Lomachenko and Teofimo Lopez was a big fight at lightweight. So we did have that at lightweight. And then, of course, you did have, we just saw Shawn Porter and Terence Crawford. That was a big fight. And Errol Spence and Danny Garcia and Shawn Porter. Those were big fights. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like we haven't had big fights in those divisions. We haven't had big fights at the middleweight division because of Canelo. We damn sure ain't had big fights at the super middleweight division because, again, there were no unifications that was going on while Canelo was there. At the very least, I can look at the lightweight division. There's a unified champion. I can look at the welterweight division. There's a unified champion. You see what I'm saying? You know, if you look at the middleweight division, once Canelo left, well, there's no longer a unified champion. Same thing in super middleweight. If there wasn't a unified champion before he got there, and when he leaves, I don't think there'll be a unified champion. You know, so that's the only thing I would say is you can't necessarily say lightweight and welterweight hasn't had big fights. Yeah, they have.
Let's move on to preview some fights here before we shut down the show. I'm going to focus on two main fights. I want both of your opinions on this one. I'll go back to you, Bo. We had a bit of disclosure before the live recording was involving a staff meeting with Three Kings Boxing, right? And part of the process is selecting what fights you want to cover. And no offense, but Teofimo Lopez fighting George Kambosos this weekend on DAZN, and I respectfully declined that assignment because no, I just I just don't I just don't want it. The process of getting this fight to finally happen, it's been farcical with Triller, especially. The fight is now going to happen on DAZN, and yeah, I was tired of the entire fiasco in the lead up to this, and I'm exhausted, and I just don't want to deal with it. So I'm gonna leave it up to you. Lopez finally making his return to the ring following his win over Lomachenko toward the end of 2020. Mandatory defense against Kambosos from Australia. Your thoughts on this fight? Bo.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was it again? Lopez and
See, that
Kambosos.
shows how disinterested you are in this fight as well. So,
You said Lopez
yeah.
and Kambosos.
Yeah.
Uh, if Kambosos go 12 rounds with Lopez, Lopez ought to slap himself. He ought to be ashamed of himself. If Kambosos goes, if Kambosos makes it to the championship rounds, Teofimo Lopez ought to be ashamed of himself. I'm just gonna say it. Stop telling me how good you are. Stop telling me how bad you are. Nope. 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 You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Understand, man. I'm not one to always talk about our fighters and all that, right? But George Kambosos arguably lost to Lee Shelby. Lee Shelby, that's not the same Lee Shelby. Remember when people were talking Lee Shelby, the Wales Floyd Mayweather, he was the Floyd Mayweather of England and all that. So George Kambosos arguably lost to this guy. Teofimo Lopez just beat a former pound for pound number one fighter, or perceived to be a pound for pound number one fighter, in Vasyl Lomachenko. That's what he beat. George Kambosos should not be this difficult, not be this hard. And of course, everybody's gonna say, "Well, styles make fights." Okay, I do not see a Vasyl Lomachenko struggling with Lee Shelby. I don't see Teofimo Lopez struggling with Lee Shelby. So if George Kambosos makes it to the championship rounds, hell, if he goes 12 rounds, hey, bro, you got to stop talking like you big money. You got to stop talking like, run up on Devin Haney, talking like you big money. Nope. Nope. You have to be humble yourself. So that's where I am with this fight right here, man. Teofimo Lopez should get George Kambosos out of there before 5.
Do you agree with Bo's assessment, Daniel?
I Yep. This is an IBF mandatory after all. And the IBF, while being the one sanctioning body that actually enforces their mandatories, as a good friend of the program would say, they have been pretty dog shit at times about picking set mandatories. And this is one of those situations. They had to do it. It finally had to be done. We could have had this 6 months ago. But Teofimo caught COVID. Although that's the official reason. The other people want to say it's because Marlin Stadium wasn't selling. And then the whole fiasco of going to Madison Square Garden, go to the Hulu Theater, only for Triller to get kicked out because of a versus battle. And then the whole Barclays situation winding up with Triller defaulting on their purse bid. And luckily, Eddie Hearn was able to pick it back up and just move it along. He didn't have to move it and change anything. Teofimo should be just fine with this fight. I wouldn't be surprised if this doesn't go past 5 rounds. Because Teofimo sees the moves that are being made around him. Tank is being marketed as a star by Floyd. He's being marketed fairly smartly, fighting fighters who they'll know he'll beat pretty easily. Not pairing him up against people that would probably outbox him or embarrass him, i.e. Lomachenko. And then at the same time, you're going to have the situations right now where you have Devin Haney, the guy you've been talking shit to. He may not be part of the equation if Jojo Diaz has anything to say about it. So he has to step up. He has to lay the claim into it because even though, depending on who you're talking to, he's either undisputed or he's not, I'm in the camp that he's not. He has to show out. He has to end this. Probably, like I said, I don't think it's going to go past 5 rounds. I think he's going to handle his business and then see what he's going to have to do for the rest of the time, because that contract that he signed with Top Rank that adjusted to it guarantees him pretty decent paydays, but it also has a rematch in Loma early on, so he may already be busy. So unless he gets the fight against the winner of Haney Diaz, we know what he's going to come up with next.
That fight between Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos is going to happen on the 27th in New York City, on the Zone, on the same night in Las Vegas on Showtime. This is the fight, fingers crossed, that I will be covering, unification bout at 122 pounds, Daniel, between WBO champion Brandon Figueroa and WBC champion WBO champion Stephen Fulton, WBO champion Brandon Figueroa. I think this fight has potential to be very, very good. The boxer and Fulton, who I should say he's shown ability to be aggressive as well, particularly in his last fight, fighting a Figueroa who likes to come forward, very aggressive, likes to pound the body. Potential to be one of the better fights of the year. And to our earlier discussion about Akhmadaliev, let's hope the winner of this fight will fight MJ Akhmadaliev in 2022. But first and foremost, your thoughts on Fulton Figueroa coming up on Showtime?
Oh, this is going to be a fun fight. This is going to be a fun fight because Fulton, skill-wise, his defense, his footwork, his combination work, is going to present problems for Brandon. But the thing with Brandon is he has the work rate of his brother, but he doesn't have the bullheadedness, like I said, to rush into things without thinking of his brother. And not to mention, Omar kind of headhunting a lot in his fights while going to the body at the same time. Brandon does invest a lot more in the body, which is what you're going to need to slow down somebody like Fulton. This is, to me, going to be a very interesting fight. We need, like I said, you need to see how aggressive Fulton can be against somebody that'll come forward like Figueroa. We have to see how much power Brandon actually has compared to Fulton, and whether his chin can handle the combinations of Fulton. So to me, it is going to be probably the fight of the night. I know most eyes are going to be on Lopez Kambosos because of the history involved, but this will probably be the fight of the night to me, and it'll be interesting. And I would not be surprised. I know you guys talked about MJ, but if the fight turns out good enough, I would not be surprised if they rematch instead.
Absolutely, I'll go to you on this one, Bo. And to Daniel's point, Fulton, he needs to be ready. He better have his in prime physical shape, because as Figueroa's shoulder gets neary, if you're not strong physically and mentally, he will make you cave, because the body punches and the sheer aggression and will of Figueroa just broke Luis Nery down and made him quit.
Yes, it did. Broke him down like he owed him something. And that's the thing about that. That's the thing about that fight. I like this fight. Brandon Figueroa is a far better fighter than his brother, in my honest opinion. I mean, last time we saw his brother, he looked like Jim Carrey, man, off the tee. off of the TV show, right? I mean, off the movie. Brandon Figueroa is seems to be a ring IQ, seems to be a little better than his brother Omar. And what he did to Lewis Neary, top notch. Stopped him with a body shot. And this was Lewis Neary that was one of the hardest punchers that we remember being out there. And Stephen Fulton, remember Lewis Neary had beef with Stephen Fulton. Stephen Fulton had even told him, man, you better sit down someplace before I run you over. And of course, fortunately, he fought Brandon Figueroa and took care of that. So I said it before. I'm not jumping out of my seat for this, but I am extreme. Like I'm close. Like I'm on my tips. I'm ready to get up out my seat because I do like this fight. What makes me curious though is what kind of condition Brandon Figueroa is gonna be in coming off of COVID. That's I'm gonna be curious about that. Like what kind of condition is he gonna be in from a health standpoint and physically coming off COVID? What role did that play in him and him being sick like that? That's gonna be very interesting to me.
And the last point before we begin to shut things down from Logic, he says he used to train with the Figueroas in South Texas. He said Omar Figueroa had more pop, but Brandon had more discipline outside the ring. It seemed I agree. I would tend to agree with you on that one. Brandon more disciplined and just more focused. And if both fighters, Figueroa and Fulton, fight to their potential on the night, it should shape up to be one of the better matchups of the year. And I think we're going to start shutting things down on that note. I want to thank everybody who joined us in the chat, particularly Logic. A lot of comments, a lot of questions. Appreciate you for that. Also, League Rose, who was in the chat earlier. If you like what you heard, please hit that in listening either live or we're listening on delayed basis, be it on the YouTube show or just the podcast on various platforms. Please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe on YouTube. Please subscribe to the show on the various podcast platforms of Pound for Pound Box Report, be it Apple Podcasts, be it Spotify, be it Anchor, anywhere and everywhere else where RSS feed podcast is distributed. Right. I'm going to go around the panel here. I'm used to going to ladies first, but since Gail is still on the road back from Las Vegas, she was covering the Crawford Porter fight for nyfights.com as well as Community's Digital News. If you want to follow Gail to talk boxing or even to talk media, because she does teach media on the side, you can check her out. You can check out her boxing work over at Community's Digital News COMMDIJI news.com. You can also check out her stuff on nyfights.com, or you can follow her on Twitter at PRPro San Diego. I'll go to you, Daniel, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially as it pertains to the Miami Heat, who I think early on, I think they have a real shot to come out of the East this year and make it back to the NBA Finals. Let the folks know where they can check you out.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, folks. Rocks99, RAWKZ99. Definitely catch me on. I don't know how we're going to do the show next week with me and Joe and Francis because it is Thanksgiving week. It's going to be Turkey Day. So I don't know how it's going to shape up, but we're definitely talking about this upcoming card because it's going to be, to me, it's probably going to be one of the more entertaining weekends next weekend coming up.
I go last but certainly not least, my brother-in over at Three Kings Boxing, Bo, head of media relations for Three Kings Boxing. For those who want to talk the sweet science, let the folks know where they can find you. And quick plug here for 3KB.
Well, of course, always go to 3kingboxing.com for the latest grades what's going on in the sport of boxing. So definitely make sure you check that out. Daniel, man, I told you this before, and I think when you messaged me late. When you guys do the show, tell me the day before, man. I'm old, Daniel. You can't message me the day of and think I'm gonna see that and remember that. You gotta.
Well, in this case, it's Thanksgiving weekend, man. We normally try to do it on Thursday, but we're gonna be eating turkey on Thursday.
Yeah, but if y'all do the show, definitely message me because I would love to be on the show. But outside of that, man, good to be here with my brother. Good to be here talking with you guys, man. Always love what we do, and just one quick message. When she hears this, Gail, you got some questions to answer for a young lady, because I didn't authorize I didn't authorize that trip. You know, how do I know you ain't sneaked down there and see your other boyfriend Chavez Jr.? So, I mean, it is Vegas. It's right there. It's right there. So, but yeah, man, pound for pound boxing talk, man.
All right. Be sure to hang on after we shut things down, Daniel. For those who want, and YouTube though, for those who want to talk boxing, music, fitness, you know what it is with me, brother Jr. at brother Jr. 76 on Twitter. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to find out all information about the show, the page is a place to go to. Blog page, p4pboxerreport.com. Again, if you want to email us with a question or comment, please do so. P4pboxing at p4pboxerreport.com. On the page, the site, you'll find information where to check out the show on social media, Facebook, Twitter, IG. The Tumblr's still around, as well as YouTube. Also, where you can donate, Cash Me and PayPal donation links, and where to check out the show on various podcast platforms, be it Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to subscribe to us on Apple. Make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes. Check us out on Anchor. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please make sure to leave a review. 5-star review will get read on the show. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Teofimo Lopez and Kambosos Jr. We'll do a recap of Brandon Figueroa, Stephen Fulton. We didn't talk about these fights because I didn't want to run extra long, but on the undercard of Teofimo and Kambosos, you got a fight for that vacant IBF junior lightweight title. Fighter by the name of Fuzili from South Africa, excuse me, fought Kenichi Ogawa. On the undercard of Fulton and Figueroa, Rais Alim fighting Eduardo Baez, one of the Russell brothers, Gary Antonio Russell. He's also fighting on that card. So we'll preview those fights. And it depends on when we get back, because the reason I'm doing the show here on Sunday, because my schedule is stock full next week. I wouldn't have the time. Except for Thanksgiving, and I don't want to do a show on Thanksgiving night for those who observe Thanksgiving and who probably eat turkey and stuff in their faces and their bellies. So we'll definitely talk about those two fights that I just mentioned, and we'll also dive into fights that's happening on the 4th. The next time we come back, Devin Haney defending his WBC lightweight title against WBC interim 135-pound champion Jojo Diaz. On the undercard of that, Jessica McCaskill defending her undisputed women's welterweight titles against Victoria Bustos. Also on the 4th, on the 5th, I should say, the next night, Gervonta Davis, he makes his return to the ring against Isaac Cruz. We may talk about Sebastian Fundura, who's fighting on the undercard of Tank Davis and Cruz. He's fighting Sergio Garcia, and also Derenchenko, who was mentioned during a brief discussion about Triple G. He's also fighting on that card as well. So hopefully the next time we will be back, we'll talk about all of those fights. Again, I want to thank everybody who joined us in the live YouTube chat. Logic for his questions and comments. Lee Groves as well. For Daniel from the Inscriber and for Boxing News, from Bo from Three Kings Boxing and Truth and Facts About Sports. This is your host, Michael. Episode 344, Pound for Pound Boxing and Report in the books. Everyone have a good evening, good night. Happy Thanksgiving for those who celebrate. Don't skip on the food. Use this day to stuff your faces, eat as much as you want to. Episode 344, Pound for Pound Boxing Report. We will see you next time. We're out.